Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for AppSheet Office Hours. My name is Lauren and I'm the content manager for the Google Cloud community team. Today we have several members from the AppSheet team who will be taking us through our agenda today. We'll be covering updates and tips using the App Editor, chat apps, and AppSheet databases. And as always, we'll have time to go through your questions, starting with those that were pre-submitted in the community, and then we'll get to those in the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit those into the YouTube chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them either in the chat or after the presentation at the end. For any questions that we aren't able to answer today, we'll be publishing a recap post in the community, including resources and written answers to your questions. So make sure you keep an eye on that. And the link to the community is in the YouTube description. And I love seeing where everyone is joining us from. We have Rotterdam, New York, Switzerland, Minnesota, Ecuador. Oh my gosh, we have everyone from everywhere. So it's great to see that. Thank you so much for joining us. And without any more delay, I'll hand it over to you, Arthur, to take us away with the AppSheet Editor.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. My name's Arthur. I'm one of the PM at AppSheet, and I tend to focus my work on the AppSheet Editor, and that's kind of like what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. So you may have noticed since October, we've been rolling out some changes in the editor. And so you know that AppSheet kind of like lets you build your own applications, but you've also probably discovered that it takes a little bit of curiosity to figure out how to work with the editor and discover what you can do and cannot do with AppSheet. So in order to streamline a little bit the experience to build your own applications, we've made some changes, and we've tried to make the navigation both more intuitive and more direct. And what I mean by that is that it should be easy for you to make the most frequent tasks that you need to perform throughout the editor to build your app. But you also need to be able to discover all the settings that may not be right at your fingertips. So we worked on that, and we also added, I would say, some kind of quick links that help you set up your app a little bit more quickly. And I'll walk you through a demo of the editor just to showcase some of these. So here you have a facility inspections app, right? And now you have kind of like a navigation on the left that is a little smaller, but that lets you go through your data, your views, your actions, your bots, and a number of other settings. That hasn't changed too much, but what has changed a lot is that now you can see, in your secondary nav here under data, a list of all your tables, right? And so you don't need to scroll as much anymore. And on top of that, we have organized the slices to be represented right under the table that it belongs to. So that hopefully lets you kind of like navigate all of your data a little bit more quickly. And we've got something similar under views. You've got the views under the primary navigation, menu navigation, but all of your resources, all of your app components are available and easily accessible. Let's look a little bit at the data. So there's a number of things that you can do with each table or slices here. One, you can start creating a new table right from here, but you can also more quickly create new slices associated to that data. So here, you can see that if I were to click here, I immediately get started on creating a slice that is related to the inspections table. So that's all to make it a little bit faster for you to get to what you need. Some of the less frequent tasks, as I mentioned earlier, are hidden a little bit behind overflow menu, and you can access them here, but also towards the center in the top, view data source, table settings, and a little bit more here. Same way for view, right? You've got your different views, and you can add new ones. You can change the settings of each, and so on. One thing that we have changed is that some of the settings related to data, views, or actions or automations are now a little hidden. And so they all lie behind a settings menu. And so here you have a quick access to the settings menu that takes you directly to a general settings menu. You're already taken to all the settings associated to the views. And here we have kind of like organized them so that you can quickly find what you need. Either it's a general setting for views or it's more localized. And you can navigate to different types, especially theme and branding, but also performance and offline mode. You can access all these settings, not necessarily just to these icons, but also in the general menu on the left. Okay. So now let me talk a little bit about what we changed to let you edit your app, what we call in context. So it takes a lot of effort to, create a view and then decide to, decide to see, what kind of column you want to edit. And so now we have all these different eyeballs here. Sorry, excuse me, need to drink. So you have these slices here that you can access a lot more easily in context. And you can edit directly, click done when you're done. You can also add slices in context directly from here. You can also, you can also access the specific columns, edit them here. And finally, if I were to see actions, you can edit them directly in context. So hopefully all these changes help you get to what you need more intuitively and faster. And we've got more to come. So there are more changes to arriving. It's still kind of like in preview at this point. And hopefully you like it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Arthur. I think we just had one question related to this. We noticed this with some users, but how can I get the button to the new version? Some users have this version, but I don't.
All right. So there's in theory, you should be able to, can you show my screen or not?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. So most people will be able to turn on or turn off that new navigation menu through this toggle in the up bar here, right? So that lets you turn it on or turn it off. Now, some users do not have access to that toggle. And the reason is that in our rollout process, we can incorporate a certain percentage of users. And we've refrained from rolling it out completely to avoid some of the enterprise customers to be impacted by that. There's different reasons for us to do that. The process of rolling out this feature is not ideal, so we do plan on improving on it. But at the moment, if you're not seeing it, it's possible that you're just not in the rollout, but you should expect to get it pretty soon. I think probably in about a month.
Awesome. Makes sense. Okay. Thank you. And I see other questions coming in, so we'll be sure to get to those. But next, we're going to hand it over to Rachel to take us through chat apps.
All right, thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Goodman-Moore. I'm a product manager at AppSheet, leading a sort of smattering of things, but one of those things is our workspace integration initiatives. And right now we're focused on chat apps. So let's talk about chat apps. And before I get into what hopefully, if you were on I guess it was the last iteration of this, the November iteration of this community office hour. We tried to do a live demo and I ran into some technical difficulties. So we're going to try to do that again, hopefully with fewer technical difficulties. But before we get to that, I wanted to give a little bit of a reminder for those of you who saw that session or have heard about this before, or a walkthrough for those of you that are new to the idea of chat apps as to why we're doing this in the first place, why we thought there might be value in creating a chat app, as well as what it actually is, before we really see the ins and outs of it. All right, so if you have used Google Chat before, or if you have used chat apps before, which is just Google Chat's general name for chat bots, you may have run into some difficulty in setting them up if you are not a super technical person, if you don't have sort of deep code knowledge, because currently the ways that you can set up a chat app or a chat bot that runs in Google Chat, AppSheet notwithstanding, but currently are with AppScript or with Cloud Function, or writing a custom HTML application and then uploading it to Google Cloud Platform or GCP. These are very technical ways of getting what is hopefully a fairly straightforward, helpful end user capability into chat. So the barrier to entry for people creating these types of things, chat apps being things like, I want to submit a form, or I want to do an approval process, or I want to even just run an automation, has been very high, which is why, if we can go to the next slide, we developed this concept of chat apps, which are essentially another place that AppSheet apps can run. We can basically run AppSheet apps, deploy AppSheet apps into a chat environment using chat cards, using chat dialogue modules. So anything that can be an AppSheet app can also run now with this new integration we'll talk about here as a chat app, with our goal being that we are giving really workspace-focused users, not just AppSheet users, but workspace users as a whole, workspace chat users as a whole, the ability to create these apps and interact with them on chat in, and this is the kicker, 5 minutes or less. That is a big difference from where we are now, not only because, I should say where we have been historically, not only because the historic ways of making chat apps are much more technically complex, but they also involve publishing your app's script function or your cloud function or your custom HTML app through GCP. And that process could take hours to days to weeks. But our 5 minute or less goal here speaks to the fact that we are simplifying the publication process so that anyone, non-technical or technical, technically slanted, can be able to do that very quickly and easily. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. All right, so introducing AppSheet chat apps. Here's a quick glance of what they can do. They can, I need to actually zoom into my slide here. I can't even see what I've created. You can see a GIF on the, what is that, on the right, I think, for you all, showing the interaction of an actual chat app, what it looks like once you've published one of these into chat. Again, we'll see this live in a few minutes. That allows you to interact with an AppSheet app, respond to slash commands, as well as actually click through views directly from chat. So to be very clear, you can share app views in chat. You can create chat apps from existing AppSheet apps, from new AppSheet apps, from templates, and you can publish those views into chat spaces, DMs, or group conversations. You can build automations. Almost any automation you can build in AppSheet can now run in chat. That specifically means we've also introduced a few new automation capabilities for this feature in particular that allow you to trigger an automation with a slash command in chat, or send data to a space group or DM based on a bot you set up. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, but to be very concrete about it, this is included in AppSheet for all workspace users. So if you are a workspace user that has access to AppSheet, you have chat apps available to you. And if we can go on to the next slide, what does that mean? Well, it actually means it's available to almost everyone. We entered private preview, I want to say a week ago at this point, a little bit more than a week ago. We are in, as Arthur mentioned for some of the editor functions, we are in this narrower focus for public preview right now, where it's specifically folks that have opted in to receive new features. But in the next week or so, we will be opening it up to all AppSheet users. So anyone who wants this will be able to get it right now if you toggle that feature on for app. But if you wait about a week or so, you'll see it in there, generally speaking. So we're in public preview now, and then we're moving towards a full generally available release in a few months. Okay, so let's see them live. If we can go to the next slide here. All right, I'm gonna say some good words to the demo spirits up there, and hope everything works for me. Is it okay for me to share my screen here and go through that, Lauren? Is
Yes,
that
please.
okay?
Yep.
Let me take the screen over from you, and then we will do that. All right. So we are going to go through two sort of flavors of demos. The first is going to be setting up and publishing a chat app. And then the next one, I'm actually going to turn over to a video of one of the folks who helped build chat apps who's gonna walk through some of the more detailed functionality of chat apps themselves. All right, so to start, we're gonna talk about how you would create a chat app. And I could use an existing app, or I could create a new app, or I could use a template. And I'm actually going to start with a template. So I'm going to use my simple inventory app here. I have a lot of these, but it's my favorite demo to run for chat apps. So we're just going to select the simple inventory template. It's going to think about it and set up the template for me. And then once it does that, we will see we can head over to chat apps in the AppSheet Editor. It will be in the left-hand side. If you don't see it yet, again, you may not be in that receive new features group, but if you do see it, you are. But either way, everyone should have access to it in the next week or two. And then from there, we will go through the process of setting up the chat app. And there will be two configuration options, let's say. There will be a manual and a automatic configuration option. So let's go see that right over here in chat apps. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to just go ahead and enable my chat app. I'm going to say, yes, I do want to turn this thing into a chat app. And I also see right at the top, I get a banner that says, I actually need to deploy this app before I'm going to interact with it. So I can do that right at the beginning, or I can do it at the end of the process. I'm going to do it at the end of the process just so you can see what the flow would look like if you try to interact with a non-enabled, or rather a non-deployed app. But nonetheless, going back through our flow here. So I've enabled my chat app. Again, you can do this for any existing app, already deployed or not, or really any app that your heart desires. And then the next step here is what I was referring to. This is your configuration mode. So this talks about the publication process. This refers to the publication process. And as I mentioned, the previous versions of publishing a chat app could take days, weeks, months, depending on sort of what your organizational processes look like. But we're working towards a world where publishing a chat app, making all these GCP, Google Cloud Platform project creation steps and configuration steps and connecting of bits to other bits will be fully automatic. That's our goal, so that publishing is truly one click. We are on that journey. We are not there yet, but we do give people the option of doing things fully manually if they want to, or if they have the need to for their organizations, to do that full manual configuration to publish so the chat app is usable on chat. Or you can use this automatic configuration. Eventually, when we get to GA, this will likely be one-click configuration at GA or soon thereafter. For now, it is a much simpler flow than the manual one. So we're hoping we can get more people to use the recommended version, because it's quite a bit quicker. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to use automatic configuration, and I'm going to authorize with my account here. And then you'll see, okay, so now it's connected and it's going to ask me where I want to put my chat app. And I, here at Google, have access to this folder called experimental. So I'm going to put it in that experimental folder, and then I'm going to click next, and we'll see this is loading as it creates my project. And I should mention, if you have multiple GCP folders available to you that you can put projects in, you will see them, but we will only show you the ones that you can put data in. All right, so my project was created. It's ready to go. So now the next thing I can do here is I can customize chat app actions. These are the actions that I can tell my chat app to do. I can configure a slash command to open an app view. I can run an automation with a slash command, or I can use these things called recipes. We'll talk about that in the second half of this demo. For now, I'm just going to do open an app view really quickly here, and we will say I want this inventory log view to appear when I say /log. makes the inventory log pop up. Okay, let's just go with that. And we'll click next. And now here's the part that is still manual, but will soon be programmatic, be automatic. And that is the configuring of the Google Chat API. So if you have used chat apps before or you saw this demo before, you will see something familiar here, which is that there is copying and pasting involved from your chat app configuration over here into the chat app API screen. Yes, it truly is copying and pasting. Yes, we are working on getting it to not be copying and pasting, but it is a long journey. So this is one of the parts that is still manual. But we do try and make it easy by giving you this sort of, I don't know, checklist, menu, rubric of things you need to copy and paste. So you can just click the little copy icons next to each of the items that you are copying. This one says for functionality section, what do you want to do? You want to turn on receive one-on-one messages as well as join spaces and group conversations. Connection settings I see down here as well. So I want to select app URL and then just copy in this URL. Not sure if that grabbed it. Yes, it looks like it did. Okay, and then here is where I configure my slash commands. So I'm going to add a new slash command and I can put in the data that it tells me to. Again, this will all eventually become programmatic, so you won't need to manually copy and paste anything. But for now, where we are in our public preview state, where we want to get this functionality to you earlier rather than later, there is still a little bit of heavy lifting. Okay, and then the last piece here is who do you want to have this be visible to? So I'm just going to put my email here, and we'll see why that matters in just a second. I'll click save. It says click save. I have clicked save. I'll get a spinner that says configuration saved. Great. Next. Okay. So we'll get rid of GCP for now. And now it says I can test my app. Again, I get this, your AppSheet app is not deployed message. I'm going to ignore that for the time being, but I'm going to come over here to chat and I'm going to click this plus button and I'm going to find my app, which is called Simple Inventory. And as I mentioned, I have a whole lot of these. I think this is the newer one. Is this the new one? Let's see. Hello. Whoops. Nope, this is not the newer one. This is not the one I deleted. So here's a pro tip, folks. If you have lots of apps with the same name, try giving them different names so you don't run into this issue time and time again. So what we're going to go ahead and do, so I don't have to keep searching through where my chat app is. Whoops, that's the wrong thing. So I don't have to keep searching through where my chat app is. I'm going to go and find my chat app a different way, which is through the Find Apps menu. This is actually called the Bot Catalog, and this is another way. So 2 ways now that your users can find your chat apps. And I'm going to type in the name of my app I just created. Inventory. You can see again, I have a lot of them. Inventory. I think it's the last one. Yep, there it is. So I can see it's the correct one because I've added it 0 times, but this is the one that I want. And instead of adding it to a space, which you could see I could do, and those are some spaces I already have, I'm just going to chat with it directly. And now we will see the message I get because my app is not deployed. So we will not let chat apps send messages unless they are deployed. We're doing this a little bit from a sort of policies perspective so that it feels, if you will, we'll go back over here, like you can set up the boundaries of when you can expect your app to interact or not interact. So I'm going to run my deployment check. I'm going to run this app. I'm going to move it to a deployed state. And then once it's deployed, we'll come back over here to chat. We can say something to it. And there we go. There we get our chat app. So these are the 3 views associated with that template that I set up. I can click into any one of them and I can actually interact with that view, or I can use my slash command. I just typed slash and my slash command menu showed up. And here I see my log view to make the log show up. And it will think about it, and then it will pull up the view. There it is. And I can add things to it, or I can edit things, or whatever I need to in order to be able to use this app. Okay, so that was a bit of a long demo, actually, but lots of exciting stuff to show with chat apps. Let me go back to my screen, and I'm actually going to stop sharing. And I'm going to ask Lauren, there's a video in the slide deck that you were going through. If you can play that, I think it will probably work best from your computer. That will show us, it's a video from a gentleman named Sarmad, who is one of the people who's been building chat apps, and I wanted to give him his moment in the sun to show how great some of the functionality is.
I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's like here to create an automation. So this is the AppSheet app that Nico was just editing. I'm just going to refresh to get the latest state. Go to this section here. Since I am a co-author, I'll just click next here. So this is the slash command that Nico created, right, which opens the new request view. In this dropdown that we've created, we've essentially allowed you to select like what we call recipes. So you can configure slash commands to open app views, run an automation, configure automated messages that send a chat message to a space when data changes, and so on, right? There are different events that you can listen to. And when you click on one of these, it actually redirects you to automation and automatically creates that basic automation bot. So I'll show you right now, when I click on message when data changes, this immediately redirects me to automation, and this bot was just created. I did not have this created before. It was created on the fly, programmatically behind the scenes, and now you can go ahead and populate some information as you go through this. So now you don't need to know how to send the chat automation. We create that bot for you. You just configure the details inside it. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to request ads only. And then on the send a chat message task, I'm going to send it to select chat spaces. And what's interesting here is when you click add, we've actually pre-populated the list of spaces that your chat app is already in. So you don't need to worry about space IDs or like keep track of where your chat app is. We already know that information. We pre-populated. So here, this is the space that Nico just added the chat app to. I'm going to go ahead and send a message to that. Some precursor text here. Please review this request. And then I can send an app view. So here we've created an app view that, this is for your review. Please approve or deny it. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'll try to be quick here. And so I'm just going to go to the app to create a new request and trigger that automation. And then we'll go back to chat right away. So I'm going to say here, requesting a new pen, as I always do for all my demos. I'm short on pens here. So I'm going to attach an image of the exact pen that I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then shortly in chat, if we return here, you'll see a message gets sent to chat with that card or with that view. And here you go, we've just received that. And the image takes a second to load, but here you go. This is the card. This is the request that I just made. And it's there for the space to see and the reviewers in the space can then take action on it, right? So here, I'm going to go ahead and take the approval action, and you'll see the chat cards get updated momentarily here. And there you go. The status has changed from pending to approved, and the approve action is no longer there. So here we've shown you, from scratch, you've created a chat app within minutes. You've configured chat automations within minutes. You have an entire chat app to work through, and you can add workflow processes to your chat app and to different spaces that are relevant. And that's it.
All right, so we can see that there is a lot within chat apps, and the chat apps can do. Thank you for letting me sort of drone on about it for a while. But let us know if you have questions about them or if you want to use them. Like, again, there's a post in the community right now that explains how to get access immediately, and then, as I mentioned, you'll be seeing it available to everyone in public preview in a few weeks. So enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So we have a few questions on chat apps, but one I wanted to bring up first before we transition to the next section is from Graham. Can an app be both a chat app and a regular app, or would you have two separate apps in that case?
Yeah, so that's one of the really cool things about chat apps. You could do either. You could have a chat app view of a regular app. So as I mentioned right at the beginning, chat apps are basically just another view of your existing app in the same way that you have a desktop view and a mobile view. So you can have the same app host the chat version as well as the normal mobile version. That said, you may find that what you want people to do on chat is a little different or narrowly scoped, or maybe even broader scoped than what you want to do with the entire app. So if that is the case, then you might want to make a copy and run that as the chat app version.
Awesome. Okay. We have just one more major section to cover here, and that is on AppSheet databases.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. For those who haven't met yet, my name is Shirley, and I'm the PM for AppSheet Databases. So today I'm just going to go through a couple of improvements that we made for AppSheet Databases. It'll be really quick, and then I'll hand it over to Christian, who has a really cool demo. So just as a short reminder, AppSheet Databases is currently in public preview, so it's enabled for everyone. And these are the key points that I wanted to share or highlight about this feature. So the first and foremost thing is that this is an easy one-click provisioning first-party database for AppSheet apps. And I know there are some questions on what are the advantages of using AppSheet databases compared to Sheets. The first thing I wanted to highlight is the user intuitive interface for modeling your data, and I'll walk through what that looks like for those who haven't seen it yet. Also, this does simplify the creation of AppSheet apps and it's integrated within the AppSheet platform because it is first party. So you also see how app creators can easily switch between the editor and the database interface. And it also allows us to do things like better or more quickly notify apps when there is an update to the data so that they can quickly start their sync process. And this is currently included in all AppSheet plans. Lauren, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. Cool. So just a quick update on what we've been working on and what's also coming up. And I'll also switch to my screen so that I can show this in action. So quickly, we've been working on import from Sheets to help people migrate or import their data into an AppSheet database. We're also working on some improvements inside the AppSheet App Editor. And then coming up, we'll be adding more features around audit interface, especially for admins, improving how you can view a history of events, and also adding AppSheet databases to become a shared team resource. And with that, I'll switch over to my screen here. Awesome. So right now I've signed in into AppSheet, and I'm sure most folks here are familiar with the My Apps page. So going over to the Databases tab, you can see I already have some here, but I just wanted to show quickly how you can import sheets and some limitations around that. So clicking on the Import Sheets button, you'll see a Drive file picker. So these are all the sheets that are hosted in my Google Drive. I'm going to pick my nice grocery store since I love shopping for food. And now we'll slowly be importing your data from Sheets and just switching over. This is what my Sheets looks like. Oh, it looks like it finished. Going back here, I have 3 tabs. Right now, the limitation for the Sheets import is we will be importing the first 5 tabs up to 10,000 rows per table. So here, looking at my database, I can see my 3 tables have been imported. I can drag this around to reorder them however I like. And this is the user interface I was speaking of before that allows you to model your data in a more user-friendly way. So for example, you see here, I've imported the next arrival date column. It's detected that it's an enum because I just had 2 dates in my data, but I can easily change that into date and time here. And it just gives us a warning that if it's an invalid column type conversion, then you might see some data loss. You can undo this if it's not what you intended to happen. So here you'll see that instead of enums, this is all date and time format, which means it'll show accordingly inside my app. I can do other things here too, such as changing different column types, adding more, and choosing which one is the label that will be prominently shown inside an app. For now, I'm good with this. I'm going to click on the app panel, and this is where you'll see apps connected to your database. I'm going to create a new one quickly off of this grocery store data set, and then now AppSheet will create an app based on that data as usual. And then you'll see that I've landed here in the new Visual First editor that Arthur was speaking about. Some improvements that we're making along here are within the data tab. You'll see that we'll warn you that you cannot change a column name here and they must be changed inside the database. We also noticed that there were some bugs around changing a column type and that not preserving after column regeneration. So we've addressed that. And this is useful if you have 2 different tables of different data sources. So for example, a sheet and an AppSheet database. You can change this to be a ref type so that it references the table that's from Sheets, and then you can set references that way. What's still coming is we'll be allowing virtual columns to be labels. So I've had this enabled on my account for now as I'm just testing it. But what that means is if you have a virtual column, for example, let's say I want to do cost per quantity plus 2 as a simple kind of formula, I can now save this and then set that as a virtual column. So let's remove that. And previously, this would give you an error because we're still implementing it, but we'll be rolling this out and enabling it soon, so you can now use virtual columns as labels. The last improvement I just wanted to quickly highlight is that when you're managing your data, you'll notice that you can create multiple apps off of the same table or the same data set. And with that, it might be confusing or hard to track which app is using which table or which columns. So now you'll see if you try deleting a column, we'll warn you which app is connected or using that column so that you get to know, okay, which apps will be affected and which apps you might want to go and refine first. You'll also see the same message when you go to delete a database. So hopefully this prevents users from accidentally deleting data that's already connected to an app that people are using. Awesome. I think that's mostly all of the improvements I wanted to show, so I'll hand it off to Christian.
Thank you, Shirley, and also thanks for that last little feature there that was implemented, having deleted an app or 2. So anyway, so what I'm going to show you is kind of like a nice integrated demo that kind of puts together a number of features all working towards like a common solution. So if you can see my screen, hopefully you can see my blue screen, which basically lists off the features that I'll be showing. So I'll go back into the new editor UI. I'll be showing like desktop mode for just a better view on your application as opposed to smaller mobile form factors. And then of course I'll show like this solution that uses AppSheet database, dynamic email, also known as embedded app view, as well as how to use the AppScript connector, which we launched last year. And then finally just showing how the chat apps is integrated, right? So the demo itself that I'm going to show is it's a solution that provides essentially a projects training. It's like a training solution for citizen developers. So for example, if you're in an enterprise and you need to train like a number of different citizen developers to get up to speed on the different technologies, then this would be like a tracking application where you can submit requests for training projects and have them approved. So as I mentioned, it integrates like the embedded app view in Gmail. So you can actually send a portion of your UI into the inbox of Gmail. And this is where an approver could go through and approve or reject and update the actual line items in that request. And then also as part of this demo, I flip over into like the desktop view, so you can also see that. And then I have some interesting integrations where I integrated chat. I've added that chatbot that's now turned on for that particular application, and I've added it to a space. And I've introduced an automation that whenever a project is approved, it would then send a chat message to the space, which would then alert anyone who's subscribed to that space. All right, so let's jump over into the demo. So here is the application that I created. Rather trivial, a couple of tables. This is using AppSheet database. And so if I wanted to actually take a look at the actual database, I clicked on the View Data Source, and that pulls up the AppSheet Database Editor. And then I can see these are the different tables. I have projects that have relations with trainers and students. And then if I wanted to, I could, of course, as Shirley showed, I could pop open into the editor itself. But I happen to have that window handy right here. So here's the application. And then let me walk through a little bit more of the application. So I have my 3 tables here. I have some views. I set it up basically for the same thing, projects, trainers, and students, which you can see here on the little tabs there. I have actions. But then I think most importantly is that I have 2 automations. One is basically whenever a new record is created, I just want to send an email. So in this case, the automation, I have the option to send an email, and I've selected Embedded App View. So this allows it to go into a Gmail inbox, and I've actually set it up. I give it a subject, and then I don't really need an email body because I can just send the form of the project. So that's one of my created views that I'm sending. So pretty straightforward. This functionality has been around for a while, since like, I think it was April or so, May of last year. And then once a new record is created, basically someone is submitting a project request for approval, the person who receives it can then update the items and then approve it. And that will trigger this automation. So this is an automation that checks, it actually is triggered only for updates, and it has a condition for when status equals approved. And if the status is approved, it will do 2 things. It will create a custom-made training doc. And so in this sense, I'm actually using the AppScript connector. I have a call over to an AppScript project, and I've created a simple AppScript function here, which goes through and copies the template and replaces like specific template text items. And then it basically finished it off by sending an email back to the end user. And then for the final task here, I have it sending a chat message. So if I click over, I send the chat message, and as you can see here, I'm sending the content of that chat to a chat space, and I have my chat app test space, which is already set up. I can show you really quickly what that looks like, but basically it just says, congrats, your project is approved, and it shows the actual project's detail, in this case, into the body of the chat message, right? So another thing just to show you, I happen to have that training chat app that I created by configuring my project. And then the thing that was also important was that I also have my test space here. And I've added that bot into this test space here. So I can see, in this case, I happen to have my training app demo, which is the actual chat app. And so whenever I push messages out to that space, anyone subscribed to this chat test space will get a message, right? So relatively straightforward. And then, of course, I did my chat apps enablement. So these are all the steps that will be vanishing shortly. But basically, I walked through, set up the cloud project, or it set it up for me. And then I went through and I created a slash command here. And that was basically it. So this app is good to go. So I will go ahead and let's just switch back over to my views. And because I've turned on the desktop mode, I can click that open. And now we can take a look at the application in a much larger form factor. So in this case, this is just like a set of projects that I've already preloaded with stuff that was in the database. So let's go ahead and create a new project request. I'll say Office Hours, project. Sorry, typos. And I'll say a cool. There you go. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and select a couple different items here. I can select a particular trainer. So I'll just grab whatever. So these are like the related records, and I'm good to go. So I'm going to save the record. So if you recall, I have an automation that will be triggered when a new record is created. So I click save, and I'll go back to my inbox here, and I should be seeing a new email arrive. There we go. So this was triggered by the automation. I open that up, and this is fetching essentially the content of that form that I specified. So I can go through and maybe even customize some of the fields. I can give it a budget, approved, and there we go. So I'll go ahead and hit submit, and that will actually push those changes back. And once it pushes those changes back, it will trigger the other automation, which is to first check to see that this field status is approved, and then it's going to send a chat message to the bot or to the chat space. And there we go. I can see a new chat message has come in. So it says, congrats, your project is approved. And then here is essentially all the details that I entered, and it's now approved. And then it's also telling me to check my email. So let's go back over to my email. All right. And I see this new message that's popped in, and I can pop open this document here. And this was created because that app script code that got called actually just created essentially this brand new template doc with the specified items that I put into that particular request. And so that basically is the demo showing you that I put together a lot of the different features into essentially a good like solution or use case in this regard. So cool. Anyway, I'll be sharing this out to the public once. I'll do a few more tinkering, and then I'll put it out so you guys can all get a look at this and play with it as well. So cool. I'll hand it back to Lauren and the rest of the folks.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. And yeah, as you said, we'll be sharing this, and of course the recording will be available so you can check it out at your own time. Before diving into some of the pre-submitted questions, it looked like there were a few overlapping and circling each other around the same topic. So I thought I would address that. So the question here is around performance of AppSheet databases and limitations. Is the AppSheet database have faster sync times than the Google Sheet? And then generally other folks were asking about performance differences. And then what is the data limit of AppSheet databases?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for all the questions. For the exact limits of AppSheet databases, I think we sent out a support link in the chat that details all the limitations. So it's right now 10,000 rows. Oh, awesome. And 10,000 rows per table and 20 tables per database at 20 databases. Sheets actually, there's another support article too, but Sheets actually released that their limitations is increased as of March last year, but their limitations is at a cell level. So it's a little bit different for comparison purposes. In terms of performance, we're still conducting a lot of tests and we're still making optimizations. So unfortunately, I can't disclose exact performance comparisons right now. But I think it'd be great during public preview for folks to copy their app into an AppSheet database and then try out for themselves to see what kind of differences they notice.
Perfect. Okay, so we will go through some of the pre-submitted questions first. So was there a change to the desktop application on how names are displayed? Names will have dots and or are blurred out at the end of the names when using, I might pronounce this incorrectly. This was not like this on last Friday. Everything currently is showing fine on the mobile and tablet mode, but not on desktop.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So a little bit of context here. I think this user is talking about the new desktop UI that is currently only in preview and not generally available. So that means, first, we don't recommend you to use it in your production apps at the moment, right? So as it's in preview, we're constantly making changes, making fixes. And I think at some point last week, there was an issue with that drop down for enums and enum lists. And so, yeah, some app creators, some users may have seen that, but I think at the moment it's fixed. If not, then it's definitely on our backlog, and we're working on it.
All right. I have an application with more than 9,000 rows. So now it's very slow. I apply all kinds of tips and tricks, but still the same issue. Will AppSheet databases be able to help with this? So I think this is kind of going off of that similar question. I don't know if you have anything you want to expand on here.
Maybe on the sheet side, we can add something. And then if Shirley wants to add something on the database, she can jump in. On the sheet side, 9,000 rows is not necessarily a lot, right? Usually people tend to be able to go with AppSheet apps with hundreds of thousands of rows in your sheet. But then it all depends on like how you organize your data and what kind of like feature you've enabled in AppSheet. So in general, it's hard to give a set limit on what number of rows you can an AppSheet app can use from Sheets, but 9,000 seems fairly small. 100,000 seems to be more or less the order of magnitude of the upper limit. And then Sheets itself has its own limitations, and it's not by number of rows, but it's by number of cells. I don't know the exact number, but the more columns you're going to have, the less rows it's going to be able to support.
Sounds good. All right. Can I add or remove users by automation or by database? Because currently I need to add remove users from App Editor.
Yeah, we can try to break this question down depending on what the use case is. So for AppSheet databases specifically, you can add or remove users within the share button or the share dialog within the database, but this is done manually, and that's just for managing access rights. So we didn't want to make it kind of automated. For sharing apps, you do have to do that inside the App Editor, and that's also a manual adding and removing people.
Sounds good. I think just a few more. Is there a plan for a feature that will mass delete tables and reference slices without having to do it one by one?
So there's kind of like two parts maybe in this question. So right now, when you're deleting a table, it doesn't delete the reference slices. And right now with the new editor UI, we're looking into that. That was reported as an issue. So definitely actively working on it. Deleting tables, multiple tables at once. Right now, we don't have that on our backlog. In general, it's not something that a lot of users do very often. So we're not prioritizing it at the moment.
Sounds good. With AppSheet databases, can we write software with larger database? My current software is very slow. Can I transfer data from spreadsheet app to AppSheet database and vice versa?
Yeah, so without a little more detail, it's hard to answer the first part of the question, but at least for the second part, you can copy an app and choose AppSheet database as the data source. So either from the My Apps page or inside the App Editor, when you copy it, you can choose AppSheet database as the source and vice versa. So you can also choose Sheets as a source, and that's the easiest way to transfer between an app backed by a sheet and an app backed by an AppSheet database.
Awesome. Okay. Can you use AppSheet databases as a data source for Google Studio and Looker Studio?
Yeah, so not directly, but AppSheet does connect to Looker Studio. So if you connect your database to an app, and then within Looker Studio, you can then find AppSheet and connect your data there, and then you'll be able to build a dashboard with the data from AppSheet database through the AppSheet connector.
And on that question, there are a couple other questions with databases and using it as a source. So is there a plan for AppSheet databases to be exported to BigQuery?
Yeah, not directly. We are building a Sheets export mechanism. So right now there's a workaround of doing that inside the editor. If you're saving it as an app backed by Sheets, it'll then copy your data into a sheet. But we haven't explored BigQuery yet since it's not a huge customer ask. But it's something we are interested in looking at sometime in the future.
And then another one, somewhat related, is how can we access the data in AppSheet databases using external reporting tools like ClickSense or Tableau?
So right now, there's no direct API or a direct public API to access data within an AppSheet database. Everything would be through the AppSheet API, which requires you to first connect it to an app. For accessing it in external reporting tools, that would depend on our connector platform. I'm not sure if these are part of the platform, so maybe we can add that in the response later, but it would either be through the connector platform if a connector exists, or through the AppSheet API.
And one more, I think, on the similar subject. How can I access the AppSheet database? I work with Python for Google Sheet data manipulation.
I think the answer, if I'm interpreting the question correctly, would be similar as before, using the AppSheet API if you're on the AppSheet Enterprise plan to pull data from a database that's connected to an app. But besides that, what you could do is for an AppSheet app, you can connect to multiple data sources. So your app is sort of the interface that joins the data from either an AppSheet database or your Google Sheet.
Sounds good. Okay. I think there are a couple of questions around chat apps now. So here we have, are you planning to integrate the chat with Google's dialogue flow? And then there are a few other questions around integrations or interoperability with chat apps.
Yeah, that's a great question. So with Dialogflow in particular, it is something that we're looking at for the future. It is not something we are planning on including sort of at GA or in the next couple of months, but it's certainly a direction we're looking at for the future of chat apps. I also saw some questions in the chat around, are you planning on integrating with Slack or WhatsApp or any other chat platforms? And just to be concrete, this integration right now is exclusively for Google Chat for workspace users. So there are some other options for getting AppSheet to work with other platforms, specifically things like Zapier can help build some of those connections, but at least the native chat app functionality that we've discussed here is exclusively for Google Chat.
Makes sense. How does AppSheet syncing work with the chat app? Is it more real-time than a standard AppSheet app?
Yeah, so the answer is both good and maybe frustrating depending on how you look at it. AppSheet chat apps work exactly like AppSheet chat apps work exactly like AppSheet web apps or desktop apps for that matter. They're truly just another surface on which we are deploying them. So they work exactly the same. The sync works the same. So if you are happy with that, then that's the answer. And if you have challenges with your web apps or your desktop apps syncing slowly, the solutions for how to make those sync speeds a bit quicker, a bit snappier are the same as for improving sync speeds with chat apps as well.
Sounds good. How would user setting selection be defined when an app is used in chat apps? Would there be any issues in enforcing security filters that rely on a user selection in the user settings table?
Yeah, great question. So because of the way that we are surfacing data in chat apps, we're doing it in actually what's called a chat dialogue, rather than a chat card, which it just sort of shows you the data. The dialogue makes you interact with it. We are able to check user before we show the data that is being shown in a chat app. That said, there are some options where you can show a card that just pastes data directly into chat, but as long as you're using that dialogue function, which is what you get by default with chat apps, that we always check user of who's looking at the data and who's clicking on the chat message, if you will. In the future as well, chat's working on a capability that I think allows you to just respond to or get a response just to the person who triggered the invocation of the chat app. So that's also an option too.
Thank you. Okay, we do have just time for one more question, but no fear, we will be getting back to these in the recap post, and feel free to please add these into the AppSheet community, and someone from the team or the community itself will be happy to get back to you. But for now, our last question that we'll cover live is, given that AppSheet is Google Workspace aware, is there a user and group management capability, one that allows me to manage user information?
Not quite sure how to take that question around managing user information. If you're asking about accessing a user's information and potentially changing it, today we don't have that. The way that the way AppSheet connects to Workspace, and especially for user and groups, is that it just reads the information that's available. It's very limited. And then it can surface some of it, but at the moment, that integration is still pretty light.
All right. Thank you again. We'll be sure to get back to your questions in the recap posts in the community. But for now, here are just a few resources that you can also find in the YouTube description. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Anyone have any final thoughts before we close out today?
No, just thank you for everyone joining and asking the questions live.
Thank you, everyone, for your amazing demos and presentations and all of your questions. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are located in the world, and we'll be in touch in the community. All right. Thank everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.